Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Enterprise Dish. And for the second time this month, I am dealing with a co-host who has just come back from Hawaii, and I'm starting to get a little jealous of everybody, and I'm not going to let it shine through this time.
Hey, I'm going to take a big sip of my Kona deep water
Wow.
here. Okay, it's actually kind of interesting, Brad. They actually go 3,000 or so feet deep in the ocean, take the seawater, desalinize that, and that's the bottled water.
Interesting. That
It's
is
really good, actually.
that is your one water fact of the day. Maybe we'll have some more later. We don't know. These things sometimes get a little out of control, but we'll talk more about your Hawaii adventures because I'm actually curious to where you went in the islands. But while you were gone, Rick, there were some big announcements, and if I would have used an alternative headline, it would have been Hell continues to freeze over, sets new record low temperatures, because Dell Tech World, or Dell, held their technology conference this week. And as we all know, Dell owns VMware and that whole collaboration thing going on they've got. But they announced Azure VMware solutions are now available. They've also announced that VMware Workspace ONE is integrating with Microsoft 365 and that VMware is extending capabilities of Windows Virtual Desktop. All in all, kind of crazy because while these guys are starting to become a little bit more friendly, I mean, there's still that Hyper-V VMware kind of battle going on over here, but the left hand is starting to shake. And I'm curious on like your thoughts, opinions on this, just because this is kind of it's a little nuts.
It is a little bit nuts. It's not quite the freezing over. I don't know if it's that bad, but what I would make of this is there's a few kind of things I can immediately dissect. One, it's actually very significant that this is a set of announcements at Dell Technology World versus something at Ignite, something at Inspire, or the Ignites on tour that were going on around the world, that type of thing. So I kind of have to gravitate it to be Dell's news, Dell
Mm-hmm.
EMC slash VMware's news. That's actually pretty important from a face value level. Um, One, I think that it's very important that the strategy that VMware is going on the hyperscale public clouds with has the two clouds that matter in that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a little, in the freeze over category because of some other areas where there's quite a bit of overlap. And I actually would say that the whole Hyper-V VMware bit actually doesn't matter anymore as much.
Really interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't say as much. And honestly, that almost became self-evident from Microsoft. I really struggle to see how some of the traditional on-prem technologies are prioritized.
Mm-hmm.
And the best example is, take something like System Center and take something like Hyper-V, right? Those are harder technologies to kind of prioritize around all the noise that's associated with Azure. So the Azure, the hyperscale public cloud race is very important because what VMware's done with AWS basically makes, there are a lot of customers that are going to
Yeah.
want that in Azure as well. So I think that they're in the end going to be a little bit different, but always working to improve offerings and the
Mm-hmm.
like. So when you think about these three key things, the VMware Azure solutions, the VMware Workspace ONE integrating with O365, and then the virtual desktop technology, I think that's actually a combination of things that are a big deal for Dell EMC to have
Mm-hmm.
that cloud parity story. And I actually know this from my own experience is that whenever you announce something with one of those clouds that start with an A, somebody's
Yeah.
going to then ask you about the other cloud that starts with the A.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also go so far to say is that the uh, the different clouds, so Amazon and Azure will actually effectively always prescribe their own path of existence. And this is a market longer term that there might even be room for three. In fact, sometimes the A conversation extends to Ali Cloud,
Mm-hmm.
and Alibaba in Asia and all. But what I think is really important to note is that there are plenty of organizations that actually are forbidden to use AWS. And that would include anybody in retail,
Oh, that makes sense.
grocery, because it's
Yep.
basically a
You're competing.
competitive
Yep.
interest. Yeah. So it kind of has to happen like this way. So those are some market observations, right? And I did, I love when we get some of these news items, right? I like to go, they say now available. Let's go see if it's actually really available. And it is, right? Some of these things are right there ready for us to go click and start paying money to use. And my this came from a AWS, I don't know what to call them. Let's just say character on Twitter. Quinny Pig, Corey Quinn had shared that the biggest single point of failure in anybody's cloud strategy is their credit card, right?
Interesting take.
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, some of these things are in the mix here right now. It's pretty expensive. $10 an hour on the good offering. Well, that's rounded up. That can add up, right? So when they say these things are available, I'm looking at some of that's the VMware solution in Azure. That's this one, the first one I saw, the Cloud Simple one. So it's actually available, and some of these services are, they do add up. And that's actually not too bad if you look at that is expensive, but the burstable situation, if I need it for a month, that's pretty attractive. If I need it for that's interesting, if you reserve it for a year or 3 years, you actually can get pretty significant savings. So that actually is really helping the economics for a lot of people, I'm sure. So that's an interesting take, at least that this running your VMware workloads natively on Azure with Azure VMware solution, you can actually get some discounts there by multi-year commit, which is interesting for the cloud model. So a lot of things can be brought into this, and that's just one of them, right? I think that the Workspace ONE integration. And by the way, if you don't know what Workspace ONE is, a lot of people haven't really, and I'm looking to see if I can get a good visual of it, right? Because we actually use a homegrown solution of our own. But think of a remote access, single sign-on, all your apps, however they might be, SaaS, virtual desktop, virtualized applications, right? It's the ultimate remote work experience, which is completely the way that VMware describes it. No, but integrating that with Azure and Azure AD and those types of authentication frameworks, that's really kind of attractive. So I think that's actually a pretty big move. You might actually see that click in a lot more, because a lot of organizations are already in Office 365 or in Azure at some level for Office 365. So delivering more of the apps that way kind of becomes that natural. Let's go back up to the buffet for something else.
Sure.
Decision.
There's also that nice, I mean, people are going to look at this and say, why would they do this? But I think there's a massive benefit to both companies, right? Because Microsoft now gets access to VMware's clientele effectively, and then VMware effectively is getting access to some of the Microsoft technology suite where they can extend their services, add more value, and effectively make their product more sticky at the end of the day.
I think it's not so much access to the customers, because I really think that the real enterprise customers, all of them, already have some VMware and some Microsoft. But I think it's actually just a better story and a better set of solutions that are going to align to what these customers are going to be doing or wanting to be doing, because maybe there had to be enough of the ask to make this make sense for both parties also. So those are all kind of factors, I think, and I think that it'll fall into place pretty well. And and we were talking about this last time with I forget what the virtual desktop technology is, but the whole nature of the whole nature of the cloud is actually, if nobody uses that much of it, that's okay, because it just won't provision that much of it. I think it's going to become like one of those restaurants you go to with like so many pages on the menu, all these different cloud services, right? If they need more, they just fire it up, right? So it's not really going to be too risky for Azure to do this.
Yeah, it'll be. We'll continue to watch how this story unfolds. A couple other one thing that just caught my eye, and I actually wrote it up, and it's not directly related, but I just find this stuff interesting. Google launched a product called Anthos, which is going to basically take on Microsoft's Azure Stack and AWS Outpost, but it's a purely software-driven solution. And we'll see if it catches any ground, but that's their attempt to try to bring the cloud, or effectively build out their own hybrid cloud with one story. So,
Yeah, I think you're going to see this area continue to evolve, and the area is the actually, I'll back up a little bit. There's a guy in Australia, a Belgian guy, and I can't quite pronounce his name right. So, Alex, I'm sorry, but it's like Alexander van der Kieken, or I can't remember, but I'll have to dig back and find that tweet I did 2 years ago, right? But anyways, he used to always say, the cloud is a model, not a location. And I really, really latched onto that, and I really agree with that. This is an area, you've seen it with Azure Stack, AWS Outpost, and then also this Google announcement where there's this appetite for having characteristics of the cloud, elastic consumption, effectively unlimited capacity, effectively inherent multi-tenancy, whatever the characteristics of these different clouds are. There's an appetite to have these kind of completely integrated on-prem, and the first kind of inkling other than Azure Stack was AWS RDS on vSphere, for example, right? So it's like you're seeing it with different stories, and you see a broader solution with AWS Outpost, and then Anthos is coming in here, watching the both of them, right, and coming in with maybe some other characteristics that they think are worth going after. And the funny thing is I've had a lot of customers that I talk to, and kind of other influencers and the like in the industry are telling me to watch the Google Cloud. So and it's more than just G Suite. It's more than just their object storage, but things like this might actually click in and start to make some action and results across the industry. So this might be the on-prem cloud model that sticks. I'm not quite sure. We'll have to watch it. But what I don't see sticking or taking over are things like OpenStack.
Sure.
I mean, there's actually a very defined telco service provider kind of market for that. But something like what Google's doing, supplemental to what Microsoft and Amazon are doing, all kind of lead to multiple options, which may end up mimicking what we see in the hyperscale space as well. So, not surprised. Check it out. It would be, if you're in the market for having a cloud experience on-prem, you really have three technologies to look for. A public cloud experience on-prem, right? Because there's already private cloud experience with, System Center and some of the VMware technologies and the science fairs of OpenStack and all that. But I didn't need to say science fair.
It's a good analogy, though.
Yeah, but all of these other kind of approaches, but I kind of think that where we are today in mid-2019, that we need to look a little bit different at that need. And I mean, I haven't dug into the Google announcement, but I'm just kind of looking at what and why this is coming to market right now.
Very, very interesting. We will see how all this stuff grows up and matures. There's still a very, very long road ahead for all this stuff. Outpost was announced in the fall, I believe.
Yeah, that was at VMworld last year, so last week of August last year.
Yeah, so that's still relatively new. Google's thing is even newer than that, and we all know how long it takes enterprise technology to kind of manifest itself in any meaningful way. So we'll be keeping an eye on this one.
Indeed.
A couple other quick things, or really just one quick thing. If you're a developer, Visual Studio 2019 is now available for the PC, Mac, and includes a live share built into the box. You can go grab those bits, provided you have the right license, or you can try it out, or you can pay Microsoft some more money, and then you can go download it. So you've got that going on. And then the other big thing, and I'm curious if you have tried this out at all, Rick, Microsoft has released beta and developer versions of their new Chromium-based browser. It's called Edge, but it's not really Edge. It's just Edge with a completely gutted new engine and UI and everything else. So the only thing that's the same is honestly the name and the blue E. But curious if you've given it a spin at all.
Not yet. But I will disclose I am very I don't know, fiddlesome is the right word when it comes to the browser
Hmm.
wars. I change very slow. In fact, once I got this new laptop earlier this year, I finally stopped using Opera.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So I was one of them,
One of them.
and one of them. But let me explain how I approach my browser
Sure.
strategy, and then what's changed in the middle, and then what am I going to do with this new thing? Because this actually, I think, it kind of borderlines on the practical tips for everybody. So I'll
Hmm.
start with where I was a year ago or whatever. I used to use Opera for all of my web interaction that was personified by Google, aka logged in, right? Now, let me explain what this means because if you're logged into Google
Hmm.
and your little picture would be up there on the
Yep.
page, and if you're using other services like I use a lot of Google Voice, you've got a great seamless experience. But I would do all of that in Opera. And then over in Chrome, I would do anything that I don't want Google to skew the results for.
Hmm.
Now, the funny thing is that Opera is actually interacts as if it was Chrome, but that personification of being with a Google account is actually pretty sticky across everything you do. So I would use Chrome, not logged into Google, to do searches, and the results will change. Now, I will disclose this is kind of unique for me because I do a lot of work for Veeam, and we have social media people that like promote me and that kind of thing. So I would Google like, how do I do this in Veeam? And
Hmm.
I would get my own dang blog post. Okay, so that's like, oh, it's not what I want, right?
Yep.
Because they've promoted my links and or related things and stuff like that. So I kind of also want to see what is the public looking at, or not so much the public, but not people like me. And that happens everywhere. You should actually do some interesting little experiments. Try it
Hmm.
personified and not. Even worse, search yourself. Logged in as you and not logged in as you. Might freak you out. Um, so beyond that, but I'm actually weird because I'm also completely open in all of my social profiles. I don't really care. All
Yep.
you can see is what I'm eating and where I've been. Now, when I take this news of a new Edge technology, new browser technology from Microsoft, I'm kind of a little skitty
Hmm.
in that it's, you know, is it Microsoft Edge or is it Chromium, right? Well, I think it's going to have what I would believe to be complete web compatibility. That's also important. If not now, eventually it'll have complete web compatibility. Will I try it? Sure, I'll definitely try it.
Hmm.
But moving it to my day to day, I don't know. Now, currently, I actually do the reverse of what I just did. I do all my non Google stuff in the built-in Edge versus
Uh,
Chrome now because I didn't reinstall Opera because the one thing I used to use, I stopped using the Launchpad, which is a bunch
mhm.
of tabs preloaded for you. Because honestly, my web traffic's very boring. I go to 5 sites and I remember all the
Yep.
URLs or that type of thing. So all of that being said, I don't really know if the browser war is a battle that in the end matters, but it's kind of interesting if we can look into something that's a little bit more seamless and portable. Me being that's Chromium based, it's going to have the same experience on many platforms potentially. So that's kind of attractive. Um, you know, the moment I see Edge for Chromium in my Android app store, then I'll really look into it. That type of thing. But I don't
Which
think
I think it
that's.
might be there.
Oh, it
It's
might. Oh, I'll get my
yeah.
phone. Let's try it. Okay.
I think it should be there.
So this is definitely also in that category of something being frozen that was not planned. So if I am going to look here, and of course we're doing this on a live podcast.
The big thing Microsoft's pitching with their Chromium Edge is that it's Chrome, but with all the Google services stripped out. That's
Mm.
effectively the model, if you will, that they're running with. Because you sign in with your Microsoft account, you eventually be able to sign in, I believe, with your Azure Active Directory account, and then have that better control over it. They're not all the way. They're not that functionality is not there yet.
That's
Um,
very interesting. That's why I used Opera. So what you just described is the problem I was doing. So maybe I will check it out.
it's
So
I mean it's
short
worth a
answer.
shot, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
cost you anything. You can just go grab the dev build, and it's They're updating it every day. The Canary build, the dev build is every week, and so I'm sure next week at build there's going to be some news about that. I would have to imagine because this is a big initiative for them.
Well, and given the fact that the apps are now available multi-platform in the app stores, and I think that also works backwards to where the Microsoft mobile device strategy is currently at. Not so much tablets, but phones, which I kind of think it almost doesn't matter, tablet or phone, because a lot of times they're interchangeable. So when I say tablet, obviously Surface has a good interest point for Microsoft, but if you make something for iPhone, you might as well have it available for iPad, right? It's basically transparent. So all that being said, a couple years ago, this would be unheard of that there's a Microsoft browser app for Android, honestly. Not that many people have downloaded it in the scheme of things. I'll just disclose that. But if what you're saying is, which I believe you, by the way, but
well,
as you described it, that is absolutely why I did multiple different browsers as I have before. So maybe it is time to check it out.
Well, while you're doing that, why don't you fill us in? How was Hawaii?
It was amazing.
Where were you over there?
Well, I went to 2 different parts of Hawaii. The bulk of the trip was in Kona, which is on the west side of the Big Island. And this was just a great resort. We had, I don't know, I went on a helicopter tour, went snorkeling.
Oh, wow. You did the whole...
Relaxing. Yeah, I didn't have a lot of time there, but long story on that. But really enjoyed the time that we had. Went there with my wife and didn't get a sunburn, which is nice. Hiked a bit, checked out lava terrain that is really rugged to walk through, but then like ethnic Hawaiian people used to live in this like cave. They showed us like this petroglyph and dwelling that they used to live in. And then I spent basically a part of a day long, half of a day in Honolulu on the island of Oahu. We have a friend that lives up there, so we met up for lunch and then came back. So it was a kind of busy shuffle, but it was so nice. And I'm gonna dish on something here, Brad, and it's fruit.
Oh yeah.
So I had the best papaya in the world or in my life, I should say, on that trip. And I think I don't know if they grow it on the island. There's a whole agriculture in Hawaii is kind of an interesting topic, but this papaya was the best papaya I've ever had. So I'm going to be, rummaging through my grocery stores trying to find papaya this good. And then secondly, guava juice is the bee's knees.
Guava juice?
Never had guava juice.
I don't think I have either.
It's pink it's pinker than pink lemonade, but it is so good, light and refreshing. Loved it. So there's my dish, and it can be served in a dish. So
well, I wish you the best of luck finding it back stateside, because I came back looking for pineapples that tasted anything like they did in Hawaii, and I have been disappointed every time since then.
I'll be on the look. I've got there's a great grocery store close to you that I grew up with.
Oh, Jungle Jim's.
Yeah, I love that place. I'm not going to go there for a pineapple, but it's 100 miles away. But that place, especially the exotics, like if I want jackfruit, guava, dragon fruit. Most of these I think I can get at my store, but if I'm ever getting really crazy, I'll go to JJ's.
That's where you can get just about anything you need. Well,
anything that's edible. There is nothing in. Actually, a funny story, Brad. In all of my travels, like if I come back saying, "Oh, that was good," from everywhere I've been in the world, I have always been able to find it at Jungle Jim's.
Oh yeah, if you've never heard of this place, I definitely recommend looking it up. Unfortunately, they're not, unless you're in like the Cincinnati area. I believe that's the only place they are. I don't know.
There's 2 of them in Ohio. That's it. And he was thinking about putting one up. Jim was thinking about putting one in Columbus, or at least that's speculation. But great. The tour buses go to this place.
Oh, it's nuts.
We're not making this up. This is a destination of food. This place is something to see.
If you can't find it there, it probably doesn't exist.
No, or it's not legal in this country.
That is a very, very true statement. Well, Rick, we very much appreciate you climatizing yourself back to the Ohio weather and the IT pro side of the world. And everybody else, thanks for stopping by. And we hope hit that subscribe button. And Rick and I will actually, is it next? Yeah, it'll be next time, but we'll probably be doing this from VMon, I would think.
Yeah, possibly live. We should probably plan on that.
Yeah.
VMon, that's a good point. Actually, VMon is 21st, 22nd, and 20th. Great way to order them there, Rick, in Miami. And if you haven't already, VO-RV-100 is a $100 discount to register courtesy of me, myself.
Save yourself some dollars.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you right back here next time on the Enterprise Dish.